Mars isn't just the biggest candy producer on the market, it's one of the biggest private companies in America, full stop. It's known for creating treats enjoyed all around the world, like Mars bars, Milky Ways, and even M&Ms. But while Mars's products are sweet, its history is marked by an intense, bitter rivalry between father and son. This is the story of how a small boy growing up on a desolate farm in Canada faced off against his millionaire father and propelled the family business to global dominance. This is the story of Forrest Mars, the godfather of candy. Born in Minnesota in 1904, Forrest's early life was anything but stable. It was marked by financial struggle and deep-rooted feelings of inadequacy. To understand Forrest, you have to understand his chief rival throughout his life, his father, Frank Mars. Having survived a nasty bout of polio at a young age, Frank knew that to achieve anything in life, you had to struggle. He took his wife, Ethel, and his son all across the country, working all kinds of jobs to keep his family financially afloat. By 1910, they'd wound up in Tacoma, Washington, where Frank seemed at the end of his rope. His wife decided she'd had enough. She was tired of Frank's inability to support his son and filed for divorce. 6-year-old Forrest had to watch his family tear itself apart before being sent off to live with his grandparents on a recluse farm in central Canada. Forrest's grandparents were strict, no-nonsense, salt-of-the-earth types, and instilled in the young boy a strong work ethic and dedication to perfection, a trait that would come to dominate Forrest's personality throughout his entire life. During his stay in Saskatchewan, Forrest continued writing to his mother. His father, however, essentially cut all contact with him, providing no child support and never heading up to visit the young boy. It's during this time that Forrest grew to resent his father. In his desperate quest for his father's recognition, Forrest made it his life's mission to surpass his old man. Considering how poorly things had been going the last time they'd seen each other, it wouldn't prove much of a challenge. Or so Forrest thought. In truth, fortune had started to shine on Frank Mars. As a child, his mother had taught him how to make chocolate treats, and Frank had used the knowledge to set up a burgeoning candy business back in Minnesota. He married his second wife and through her had a pair of twin daughters, Mary and Patricia. The company struggled at first. It was only thanks to the contribution of Frank's business partner, the highly talented chocolate connoisseur Thomas DeTarlo, that he managed to gain a foothold in the industry with the Maro Bar treat. While the new business was hardly flying, Frank had kept the ship afloat and was now sailing on much smoother waters. He named the company Mars after himself and began producing candies at a more consistent rate. It was then, in 1922, that Frank Mars made a decision that would change the course of his company forever. He invited his son over for a drink. During this time, Forrest had been studying industrial engineering at the University of California. At 18, he was a hard worker, and believed school was a surefire way of catapulting himself to a level of success his father could only dream of. When he received a letter from his man asking him to head back to Minnesota to discuss the family business, Forrest could hardly believe his eyes. The two had not seen each other for many, many years. Neither one knew what to expect from the meeting. Forrest tells the story of how he and his father sat down over a couple of malt milkshakes to sort out all the details of the business. "The Maro bar tastes great," said Frank, "but it just melts too easily." Forrest pointed to his milkshake. "Why not make a candy bar version of that?" Not long after, Mars produced that very product, the Milky Way bar. There are conflicting stories when it comes to who exactly came up with the idea for the original Milky Way bar. In a letter to his grandson, Tom DeTarlo II, Forrest seemed to admit that it was his father's business partner, not him, who came up with the idea. Forrest denied this in an interview, however. Regardless of who originally created the product, the Milky Way bar transformed the Mars company. It sold with barely any advertising needed at all. Soon, the entire country was hounding down Milky Ways left, right and centre. With his new money, Frank established an enormous factory in Chicago to up production, which he called the most beautiful candy plant in the country. Mars now employed over 300 workers in its new factory, and was an established, respected chocolate brand in America. Frank was rich beyond his wildest dreams, but there was still a thorn in his side that simply wouldn't budge: Forrest. Forrest had started working at his father's new plant in Chicago after graduation. Despite the company's success, the two often butted heads. Frank insisted on doing things the old-fashioned way and kept things simple. Forrest wanted to bring new ideas to the company and make it much more efficient. Every day he would come into the lab and have his chemists try out a new patent. After years of bitter clashes, things finally came to a head. Forrest demanded 1/3 of the entire Mars company, but his father refused. Enraged, Forrest told his father to stick his company up his ass. That was the final nail in the coffin for any hope of a warm relationship between the two. Forrest packed his bags and hopped on a ship bound for the United Kingdom, hatred still burning in his heart. Be it Frank or Forrest, at the end of the day, there could only be one Mr. Mars. Whether spurred by a sense of guilt or because he saw genuine talent in his son, Frank didn't let Forrest leave empty-handed. He handed him $50,000 and let him sell chocolates in the UK under the Mars name. Forrest saw this as the perfect chance to finally eclipse his father's legacy. When he arrived in England, the young Forrest immediately got to work. He set up a factory in Slough managed by 12 employees. After learning how British taste buds differed from Americans, Forrest tweaked the iconic formula of the Milky Way bar, then sold it as a Mars bar instead. This still causes confusion today, as Mars bars in the UK are the same as Milky Ways in the United States, but Milky Ways in the UK are more like Three Musketeers, another Mars product. Regardless of the name, the British loved the new candy, giving Forrest a brilliant start to his venture. Though he was known for his sharp business mind and ambitious nature, Forrest wasn't known for his kindness. He was obsessed with outshining his father and often took out his frustrations on his employees. Those under his command knew not to second guess him, and the whole factory was run as a tight ship. Even one simple mistake was enough to earn you the boss's wrath. In 1934, Frank Mars passed away. Nobody knows how Forrest reacted to the news, but he no doubt felt a whole heap of conflicting emotions. All we know is that he didn't fly back to the United States for the funeral, but his father had one last nasty surprise left for Forrest. His old man left the US Mars company to his daughter, Forrest's half-sister, Patricia. This made Forrest erupt with fury. Once again snubbed by his father, he believed he had earned the right to solely direct both the US and UK branches. Forrest made it his life's mission to take back his birthright, by hook or by crook. The best way of doing that was by making the UK Mars branch so powerful that he could push Patricia out of the business. In the 1940s, Forrest pushed himself and his team to the very limit, coming up with genius ideas that turned the company into a household name. It was the first to market sealed tin cans of dog food at a time when most families gave their pets leftovers. Not only that, Mars also produced the now famous parboiled Uncle Ben's rice, further growing the company's reputation for quality products. But it was in 1941 that Forrest truly struck gold. At the time, refrigeration wasn't an easy process, so chocolate often used to melt when transported over long distances. During the Spanish Civil War, however, Forrest noticed how British soldiers were eating hard-case chocolate pellets called Smarties, which could withstand any heat. He knew right there and then how to break into the American market back home. But there was a problem. The US government had imposed a strict chocolate ration because of the war. To get around this, Forrest contacted Bruce Murray. Bruce was the son of Hershey Chocolate's president, William Murray. Bruce was just like Forrest. He also clashed with his father many times on how to run the company, and wanted to take things in a totally new direction. Hershey's had been allowed to provide chocolate to the troops fighting abroad, so wasn't impeded by any rationing policies. The two business tycoons struck a deal. For 20% of all revenue, Bruce would let Forrest use Hershey's chocolate for his new pellet treats. The two shook hands, and when the first pellets were made, they stamped the letters of their family initials on each one: M&M. M&Ms did for Forrest what Milky Way had done for his father, only on an even larger scale. Forrest Mars Company dwarfed his father's branch even in America, producing goods in New Jersey and Texas at a rate no one even thought imaginable. Patricia simply couldn't compete. After years of pressure from her half-brother, she finally sold her ownership of the US branch to Forrest, bringing the Mars empire together. After 30 years of strife, there was now only one undisputed King Mars left in the world. The godfather of candy had known victory, but would never know peace. At the time of the takeover, Forrest Mars was 60 years old. Time had not made him any kinder or any less ambitious. Global success wasn't enough. He wanted global domination. When Forrest burst into the Chicago offices, the employees were taken aback, as they'd grown used to his father's more relaxed approach. When their new boss placed his shoulders on the meeting room table, brought his hands together and loudly prayed for the success of his company, they realized things would never be the same again. Frank Mars had taken great pride in making his factory a work of art. Stained glass windows, special PR events, and executive dining rooms had become the norm. Forrest Mars hated it. He cut out any unnecessary details, making the factory a lot more efficient. Forrest might not have been kind, but he was no fool. He knew taking luxuries away from employees would cause an uproar. To compensate, he upped salaries across the board and made the workplace far more egalitarian. It didn't matter what rank you were, every employee ate at the same table. This kept unions in check and made sure his workers had no reason to look elsewhere for employment. Forrest also made Mars a much more private enterprise. His father had often allowed visitors to the factory, but the new King Mars barely ever talked to the press and kept his factory doors locked at all times. He was just as demanding of perfection as he was when he first started out, flying into abusive fits of rage if an employee ever made even the tiniest mistake. Sadly, Forrest took out his insecurities on his own sons. He often berated them in public, and once forced one of them to kneel and pray for the future of the company for a whole hour during a meeting as punishment for a mistake. When his wife Audrey died in 1990, whatever energy was left in Forrest Mars evaporated. He withdrew almost entirely from public life, living in his factory, which he named Ethel, after his mother, until his death in 1999. Forrest's story is far from black and white. To some, he was an ambitious business tycoon who pushed himself to achieve excellence, launching Mars into an era of prosperity greater than anyone's wildest dreams. To others, he was a cruel tyrant with no joy for life who abused his family and friends. Was Forrest Mars a visionary genius or a mad tyrant? Let us know what you think in the comments. Either way, there's no denying the impact that the man had on not only the candy industry, but the American economy as a whole. He was a pioneer, a relentless perfectionist who warred with his own father for supremacy. Good or bad, Forrest Mars's legacy remains the same. There will only ever be one godfather of candy, one Mr. Mars, the undisputed king of chocolate.